It doesn't happen all that often, but with the manufacturers that I've been working with over the years, there are some occasions where I get to drive the same make and model of vehicle more than one time per year. And not that long ago, I was driving a turbocharged all-wheel drive compact hatchback made by a company who says that I should share the same relationship with their vehicles as a horse does with its rider. Quite a unique statement, but then again, they have been known for producing some pretty sporty yet pretty unique vehicles in that same aspect. Now, while I was driving the hatchback before, this time we've got its four-door sedan sibling. So, does going from a hatchback to a sedan really affect the car's performance that much? I'm not so sure.
I can hear your voice. I can hear your voice.
It's always interesting when I get the chance to drive the same make and model of vehicle more than one time per year. And in the time frame that I've spent away from the Mazda 3, I haven't necessarily forgotten about it, but getting back into it now, I'm suddenly realizing just how much of an advantage this car has over a lot of its competition, specifically speaking about this turbo model that we're driving right now. Now, when I was driving the hatchback, I found it to be a very, very fun car. I thoroughly enjoyed my drive with that one. And to answer the question that I was piquing earlier, you know, can changing a sedan into a hatchback or vice versa somehow alter this car's performance in enough of a sense that it's more noticeable? Well, in the case of the Mazda 3, the answer is no. It doesn't make a darn bit of difference whether you go with the sedan or the hatchback, aside from some physical characteristics that you'll see a little bit later on. The engine, I mean, is still just a joy to drive, aside from the fact that it desperately needs a manual transmission and not this very tall-geared 6-speed i-Activ automatic. But, I mean, you still get 227 horsepower, 310 foot-pounds of torque, you've got i-Activ all-wheel drive, and of course you have fun stuff like direct injection and a pretty sizable twin-scroll turbocharger attached to that 2.5-liter i-Activ 4-cylinder. Now, potency-wise, I mean, this car will pick up its skirt and move any day of the week, and when it does, the soundtrack is so beefy, it's much more deep. It doesn't sound kind of ricerish, if you will, and you don't even need to pound it all the way down to the ground. You just put your foot about halfway down and now I'm reminded why I like this car. This thing is fun. But in another sense, you know, Mazda always says that their drivers should share the same relationship with their vehicles as a horse does with its rider. And I still am scratching my head about that one, but as I've gotten to drive their cars more and more, especially smaller ones like this, I kind of understand what they're talking about, because instead of being some limp-wristed, boring commuter car that just gets you to and from work, this car wants to provide some excitement in your life. It wants you to feel like you're actually in control of the car. And going back to that i-Activ all-wheel drive, I mean, the steering is extremely tight. There's barely any play off of center. The brakes are fantastic. They grip exactly when you want them to. But of course, nobody's going to drive their daily commute to work like they're driving the circuit at, I don't know, their favorite racetrack somewhere. So as a daily driver, this is a very well-rounded package, albeit if you are used to more soft and comfortable suspension, well, you might find the suspension in this a little bit firm, and that's the case I've had with pretty much all of Mazda's vehicles. Regardless of whether they got big wheels and tires on them or not, the suspension has always had much more of a firmed up feeling. It feels a lot more taut. And yeah, you do feel pretty much everything else on the road, but as I'm driving along right now at 50 miles an hour with my dashboard showing me getting about 25 miles per gallon combined, I have no issues driving this car any day of the week. It's very comfortable. These leather-bound seats with the seat heaters on, and You may also be wondering why I'm wearing a jacket. That's because according to the dashboard right now, it is 47 degrees outside. So hell has frozen over here in Houston. Thank the Lord. I was getting so tired of those summer heat waves. And even though in some cases the Mazda 3 sedan is considerably larger than the Mazda 3 hatch, and more on that to come here in a moment, one thing that actually shocked me about this car is that the sedan is cheaper than the hatchback. You would think the bigger car would be the more expensive one to produce, right? Well, not in Mazda's case, because as I said, the one we're in right now is just over $34,000. 34 grand is the starting price of the Turbo Premium Plus hatchback. So again, this one with all the options and everything included on this car is the same as the starting price on its smaller sibling. But now getting out onto the highway, I'm starting to notice this car is a little bit noisier than I'd like it to be. But then again, you can also make more noise with this thing by going right next to the shifter. You push the sport mode button, and suddenly you go from having 1500 RPMs on your tachometer to 3000, and now you can put your foot down. Oh! As I said, this car is not slow. That torque is instant the moment you put your foot down. It's low down in the rev range, so you really don't have to poke it all that hard in order to get some performance out of this thing. And I want to tell you, even though this may be a small car to most, this car will get you in a lot of trouble if you're not careful. Now, as somebody who's had a fair few Mazda products, including a couple of Mazda 3s in his family at some point in time, I will go out on a limb here and say that this is my favorite and the most beautiful iteration of the Mazda 3 that has ever existed. First of all, the Kodo design language is spot on. Not too excessive and very simple yet elegant. But you want to talk about beautiful, again, it is the color choice. My favorite Mazda color of them all, the Soul Red Crystal. And paired with this Premium Plus's standard gloss black accents in a few different areas, this car just screams, drive me, yet love me. Just look at me. And you want to talk about looks. I also love how Mazda distinguishes this four-door sedan versus the hatchback that we looked at before. Let me explain. We still have a lot of the usual suspects, things like your full LED adaptive headlights. You've got your LED turn signals with the nice kind of fade effect hidden up on top. You've got auto high beam assist and the LED daytime running lights as well. You've got a fair bit of chrome going around, like the outside of the grille, for example. Of course, the giant encased Mazda badge in the middle. But I love things like the lower fascia. On the hatchback that I looked at, it just had this giant opening down here beneath the grille, and it had also a giant black chin spoiler that kind of made it look like it had a blacked out underbite. But this one, I love the lashing of chrome down here, paired with a little bit more of the black, got a little bit more of an opening for more air to go into that turbocharged engine up front. And also, again, this is the Premium Plus, so we've got a lot of technology here, things like the park assist. You can see the sensors inside of the grille here, and also standard on the Premium Plus is Mazda's 360 around view monitor. Now, if you weren't paying attention in our last review of this generation Mazda 3, then you will know that the hatchback is actually the smaller sibling compared to the car we're looking at here. Now, the sedan at 183.5 inches long, given a tenth of an inch or two, is almost 8 inches longer than the Mazda 3 hatchback. So if you're looking for the bigger car for your money, you are looking at it right here. Now, talking about making big impressions, I love what Mazda has done to the 18-inch alloy wheels. With the Premium Plus here, they come standard in gloss black. Honestly, I don't know whether I would prefer these in black or silver compared to the depth of the red paintwork that we have here, but these are wrapped in 215/45 series Bridgestone Turanza tires. And you know what? As good as they look, you better be ready to clean it, because after just a couple days of driving it, well, you could see how nasty they get. And if you're talking about spending almost $35,000 on any car, especially one that is nowhere close to the biggest vehicle on today's market, well, you better be ready to get some features. And Mazda does provide quite a lot for the cash. I mean, you look aesthetic-wise, the mirrors are blacked out. You've got the turn signal on the side with the little repeater indicator on the outside of the frame itself. Blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, that's already included as standard on the Premium Plus. Also included as standard is a standard size power tilting and sliding sunroof. It would have made no sense
was for them to put a panoramic on this one, so it's nice to see them kind of going back to the basics. Same with Mazda's advanced keyless access. Now the key, I really like this. It's kind of wide, but it's also thin at the same time, kind of similar to maybe a Volvo-esque type key fob. It's got all the same functions: lock, unlock, trunk, panic, and of course you can pull the little tab on the bottom, releasing the back of this key fob as a whole, and there is a key blade mounted inside which you can use to unlock and lock the vehicle manually. But if the key still has power, you can go ahead and walk up to it. You grab the handle as normal to unlock it, and if you want to lock it, there's a little touch point on the outside that you can use to lock it. But as much as this car may have sort of a family resemblance when it comes to the front, around the back, this is where you can really see the uniqueness in the Mazda 3's design. Sure, you could probably pick out a couple of things that have been seen on other Mazda products, but for the most part, the design of this car is all unique to the Mazda 3 itself. But some things we've seen on the hatchback already, like a black spoiler, unique just to the Premium Plus model. But one thing that really caught my eye is the taillights here, because yeah, you have the little rounded LED bulbs for your main taillights, but I love the turn signals and reverse lights here. While they're still yellow and clear like you would normally find on any other car, I love the lenses on them. They look like the crosshairs that you'd see down the scope of a rifle. It's just, again, little touches like that that really grab your attention with this car. Coming down to the bottom, of course, the rear end is nice and rounded, much more unique compared to the front. It's not as busy or in your face as you might expect. You can see the park assist sensors going across the rear middle of the bumper, and because this is the Turbo Premium Plus, we have a nice dual exhaust down below to boot. Now, when we took a look at the Mazda 3 hatchback, I was pleasantly surprised with just how much stuff and how much room you could get in the back. However, considering the sedan is ultimately the bigger car lengthwise, you would expect it to have a good bit more space in the back, right? Well, that's not necessarily the case. Let's go ahead and open the trunk here. And when you open it up, revealing all of my stuff that I still have crammed in the back of my pressed vehicles, well, you're looking at only 13.2 cubic feet of cargo volume. And to put that in perspective, that is much lower than the class average. Cars like the Nissan Sentra and the Kia Forte both have at least 1 or 2 cubic feet more space in the back versus this car. Now, the Mazda 3 hatchback may have a little bit of a taller space, but supposedly they're right around the same size. But you, of course, can increase that cubic feet, or that volume per se, by folding down the 60/40 split fold rear seats using the tabs right here, and that is where the hatchback ultimately wins out over the sedan. Obviously, having a taller roof line and being able to fold the seats down means that if you're looking for cargo capacity, the hatchback is ultimately the winner over this four-door. Now, as anybody who's ever experienced or driven a Mazda vehicle of recently will tell you, the beauty of their cars doesn't just run skin deep. All you need to do is open the door, take one look inside, and guys, this is a very, very beautiful place to spend your time, especially with this white leather interior providing a gorgeous contrast to the Soul Red paint on the outside. And it really does follow the same philosophy as the outside, that Kodo design philosophy. Simple yet elegant. I can definitely say the elegance factor is there. I love the thin 3 spokes on the steering wheel with that airbag that sticks out a little bit more. A huge appreciated departure over the old steering wheel. But as for the seats, I mean, they're perforated, they're leather, which is nice, and it provides that elegant sort of feel, but in this case, they are heated only, not ventilated, which is a bit of a letdown for me because I know some of the competitors either offer that as an option or as standard. Going back to the steering wheel, it's heated and leather wrapped, which is always a nice thing to have. You got paddle shifters on the back, which are a bit plasticky in my opinion, and they are a little bit clunky, but they seem to do the job. You've got your auto high beam assist on the side of your indicator stalk, and you have a manual tilt and telescoping steering column with the latch hidden under the steering column itself. But going back to the idea of showing a family resemblance, when you're in the driver's seat of the Mazda 3, everything in here somehow feels so much more familiar. And that's especially true if you're somebody like me who's been in quite a few of Mazda's products from the past couple years or so. I mean, to start with, the design in here is very beautiful. I love the color matched leather up here on the dash. You've got the stitching going up the middle, but aside from little elements like that, everything from all your buttons here on the steering wheel to the infotainment, the dual zone climate control, and all the ancillaries down here in the middle are all things that we've seen in other Mazda products before. I mean, look at this, the buttons on the steering wheel, everything on the right, adaptive cruise control, lane following, lane tracing, everything like that, all the way over to the left hand side where you've got most of your hands-free radio functions, including voice recognition, Bluetooth, and so on. And if you're looking for any kind of a unique factor on the interior of this Mazda 3, well, you're looking at it right here. It's an 8.8-inch infotainment display set in a very uniquely shaped sort of tablet-like display. And I'm very happy for one thing that they did not make this thing touchscreen, because sitting in my normal driving position, I would actually have to lean forward and extend my arm fully in order to touch any of the functions. Instead, the entire infotainment system is controlled through a series of tabs and a scroll wheel in the lower console. Now, Mazda's newest Connect system is not bad. I mean, everything else in here, from Android Auto to Apple CarPlay, we've seen that on all kinds of vehicles already. But one thing that is a little bit long in the tooth for me is the navigation system. It's a bit dated. It doesn't exactly respond in the quickest manner. As I turn the wheel, you could see it gets a little on the glitchy side. In addition to the sort of aging navigation system, one other thing that I find quite interesting about this car is the around view monitor. Now pay attention, because the 360 camera in this car is only available on the Premium Plus. However, you can see that it's got the 360 around view monitor over here on the right and the normal camera over here on the left. Now what's annoying is not only is this screen so small that you really can't get a good picture of what's going on around your car unless you have to squint a little bit, but if per se you want to change how wide you want the camera, you have to reach over to the left of the steering column and push the view button, and now you can see we have a much more wide screen camera. And you can do the same when you put it in drive, so you get the forward view camera as well, and you keep pushing the view button, you've got a wider angle, and you've also got these side cameras to activate as well. But as much as I love technology in really any vehicle, regardless of make and model, there's always one thing that I seem to care about more than ever, and that is the audio system. And lucky for me, this Mazda 3 in particular comes with a 12-speaker Bose premium audio system as standard. Now, as I've said in the past, Mazda and Bose have had a pretty good collaboration together, and well, to know that they've put 12 speakers in this car should make for a pretty good sounding experience. And while it's amazing to know that Mazda can cram 12 speakers into such a tiny little car, the rest of the interior kind of seems to follow that more basic principle that I was talking about before. Take, for example, this climate control system. Everything from your fan speed to climate zones, air recirculation, all that, it's all labeled up here on these sort of piano key-like buttons with two small little temperature controls. And then, of course, you have the buttons underneath for heated steering wheel, heated seats, and rear and front defrost, just to name a couple. But one thing that is rather amusing about this car's interior, and definitely a letdown for me considering this car's price point, is there is no wireless charger. You notice in front of these cup holders, there's a nice little storage area. There's nothing there. In the last Mazda I tested, the new CX-50, inside, or at least underneath of this multifunction center console, there was a wireless charger somewhere around here. Well, unfortunately, a wireless charger does not exist in this particular car, and I don't even know if it's part of the options list that Mazda can offer. So from smartphone connectivity to other infotainment functions, and even just phone charging, is all done via USB. Again, that's a little bit of a letdown for me. So thus far, it seems like the Mazda 3 Sedan in particular has a little bit more for your money. But one area that really doesn't seem to have changed all that much is the rear seat space. Now keep in mind, I'm over 6 feet tall, just to preface, and that seat is exactly where I would have it as I'm driving. And as you can see, even just by a visual standpoint, there doesn't seem to be a whole lot of space back here. I mean, yes, the seats are fully decked out in the same leather. You have cup holders hidden here in the back, which is always nice, but no little USB chargers hidden back here, which I kind of wish would have been back here. I know bigger cars like the Mazda 6 have features like that, but getting into the back, you really kind of have to shoehorn your way in here, because you definitely have to duck your head if you're a smaller, or if you're a taller person like me. And as you can see, sitting behind my 6'1" self, or 6 feet, just depending on which doctor I go to, you close the door, and yeah, it is a very cramped back seat back here. I mean, my knees are right in the driver's back. Legroom wise, not exactly the most comfortable, and my head's pretty much in the ceiling as well. So if you're a little over 6 feet or right around 6 feet and you're looking for the most comfortable compact car, well, you might want to look elsewhere. But unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, this now wraps up our review and drive of the 2022 Mazda 3 Turbo All-Wheel Drive Premium Plus Sedan. Wow, what a mouthful, but trust me, there is a lot to talk about with this car, and we've covered quite a bit today. So to those of you who have stayed around to the end of this review, I do appreciate your support. If you like what you see, or perhaps you learned something about the Mazda 3 today, give this video a thumbs up, and also while you're at it, hit the subscribe button down below. But let's go back to that question before. Is this the best compact you can buy on the market? Well, the engine's pretty potent, it's a blast to drive, but considering the slightly higher price point for this fully loaded model that doesn't necessarily have all the options one could possibly hope for, and also combined with something like the lacking in cargo space, well, there's definitely a question mark hanging there. But not being biased here, I still love this car. I love what it stands for, and it definitely offers something much more unique compared to, I don't know, Honda, Toyota, Nissan, all the other more obvious choices out there. But at the end, a huge thanks goes right back to Mazda USA for lending us the Mazda 3 once again to have some fun with for a whole week. But I hope you enjoyed the review today, guys, and I'll see y'all next time. Take care, everybody, and stay safe.